We left off talking about vowel features versus spelling. We talked about how a lot of the vowels we've talked about so far are those long vowels, quote unquote long vowels, of course. And so in this video, we're going to look at the quote unquote short vowels and see what we'd actually say about them. And for a lot of them, they are lax vowels. Obviously, the we looked at is called short O in that system. But a lot of the other ones will be what we're going to call lax vowels, phonetically speaking. And so again, just the way we found those mid vowels by filling in the gap between the point vowels, we're going to find the lax vowels by filling in the gaps between the cardinal vowels. And we can, even though they're lax vowels, so we are relaxing the tongue, when you relax the tongue, gravity takes over and the tongue goes a little bit lower. So we represent lax vowels below the tense vowels. So we'll start with the slightly more common ones. So between mid and low, we have e and aw. And those are lower versions of a and o. So e, 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 e. You can feel you're just lowering your tongue or opening your jaw a little bit. Same with o, aw, o, aw, o, aw. So that's the only difference there. And then between, for English, we have some even more vowels. So a lot of languages have these 7 vowels. In English, we have even more vowels. We have vowels between mid and high. So we've got e and e between e and a, between u and o. And you can feel again, e, or u. Those are very similar sounds. So let's focus on the lower set here, the mid-lax vowels. So first there's e. So that one looks a little bit like a backwards 3, but you notice it is the lowercase letter size. And the nickname of this symbol is epsilon, and it is a Greek letter called epsilon. And handily, epsilon starts with that e sound that this represents. You can hear it in bet, bell, peg, chef, mess, pebble, peck, death, ready, feather, many, and ken. So you see a lot of cases it is a single E. Some cases you get those EAs, which we also can pronounce as E. And a couple cases you have an AN pronounced that way, which is usually pronounced an. So as I said, this vowel is mid, front, and unrounded. So both a and are mid. They're both in the middle of the mouth. They're both in the front of the mouth. And like all front vowels of English, they are not round. But a is tense and e is lax. You hold your tongue tense with an e and you relax it with an e. On the other side, in the back of the mouth, you have, well, maybe you don't, I have aw. So all of these words, as a speaker of English with this vowel, I have an aw. So cross, long, dog, gone, often fought, caught, gauze, fault, raw, crawl, wall, talk. I have an aw sound in all of those. So aw is similar to o. It's mid height. It's in the back of the mouth. And it's unrounded, just like O, but it's lax. So O, you hold your tongue tense. Aw, you can relax your tongue. Now again, as we've talked about, not everyone has an aw. In fact, some people in this class, as we've talked about, don't have an aw sound in their English. In that case, they have an ah. So perhaps these pronunciations sound more natural to you. Kras, lang, dog, gone, often, fought, caught, gauze, fault, raw, crawl, wall, talk. So talk in that case would be pronounced the same as like TikTok, right? So if you have that dialect where you only have one vowel in this space, then you would pronounce both of these probably talk. For me, it's talk for the first one with an aw. My lips are round, aw, and talk, my lips are wide open for that one. If you heard me doing maybe, and they didn't sound just like yours, I always think about an Irish accent when I think about the ah. So maybe you heard a bit of an Irish accent when I was reading this list with an ah. Okay, now let's move up to the less common lax vowels, and that's these two right here. So this is I. Some people call this capital I, and that's a good name for it, but you notice, again, it is lowercase height. So strangely, paradoxically, this is a lowercase capital I, but not a lowercase I. Capital letters are never used in the IPA. So even when they use something that looks like a capital letter, it's a small version of it. So we hear this sound in fit, bill, quip, fiddle, kiss, giggle, pick, quiz, typical, and physical. So they're all represented by the letter I. Some of them do end up with a Y. We talked about how there were some exceptions with Y in class last time. So that is our is sound. That is our it is high and front and unrounded, just like E, but it is lax. So E, you can open your mouth a little bit. I tell Spanish speakers who have trouble with this sometimes that they should, for an E, they should just be able to fit their fingernail between their teeth. But for I, they should be able to really fit their finger in there. And because your mouth is a little bit more open. And then the back, we have one of the rarest sounds that is had by English, and that's This one is sometimes called horseshoe. Technically, it is an upsilon, but it can be too hard in class to talk about the difference between epsilon and upsilon. So horseshoe is good here. Some people like to call it upside down omega. That's fine too. And so this is we hear this in many cases with a double O, like in good, book, wool, hoof, took, and wood. Some cases with a U before an L, like pull, bull, and full. And some other cases should, put, push, and bush are all cases where you have a U representing this sound. So sort of a mishmash of spellings for this sound. So it can be hard to tell people what you mean when you're talking about this sound, which is why we love having the IPA. So this is very similar to oo. It's high, back, and unrounded. So it's high height. It's in this area. It's rounded, rounded, like it says here, and it's in the back of the mouth. It is lax. So ooh, I hope you can feel your tongue relaxing when you say your tongue drops in your mouth. This is a very unusual sound, as I said. Some people who are not native English speakers want to say, what's the difference between this and oo? And you can really hear it with those L ones. So pull, pool, full, fool. English speakers, most dialects tell those words apart. And if you want non-L examples, you have to pick some a little bit strange words like wooed, cooed, and shooed, but we do recognize all those words. And we recognize the difference between should and shooed, or could and cooed. This does leave one spot, right? So we've gone all the way down the back of the mouth. We do have this spot in the front of the mouth unaccounted for, and that's the low front sound ah. So we hear that in craft, grass, bad, anatomy, at, tax, plaid, laugh, have. So all of these have an A involved in their spelling. So this is low and unrounded, like ah, but it's as far front in the mouth you can get. So we said we have this trapezoid, right? Because we have the teeth and the lower and the thing and the gums up here. There's not any room to make a vowel there, but as far front as you can get is where ah is. This is why a lot of languages don't have ah, because ah and ah are pretty close together, as opposed to e and oo, where you have inches, or at least, multiple inches separating where the tongue is for e and oo. And of course, the sound, it's different as well. Ah is also a little bit higher. Some systems might say ah is tense and ah is lax. We're not going to worry about tense and lax when it comes to low vowels. We'll just call them undefined for tense and lax. And for English, that's, for my dialect of English, I should say, that's totally fine. To just say one is front and one is back, and they're both low. And we have one more vowel, unfortunately, because look, we have this nice pattern, 5 up the front, 5 up the back. The only rule breaker is the fact that ah is not round in the back, and that sort of makes sense, because if your mouth is that open, how could you round your lips? So the one that doesn't fit the pattern is so an unusual sound in world languages, but a common sound, very common sound in English. So this is mid-height, it's lax, it's non-round. So it makes it similar to aw, but it's not round. So if you say an aw without rounding your lips, you'll get ah. That sounds a little bit wrong, doesn't it? Or if you say an ah a little bit higher, that's pretty close. So the fact of the matter is, it's hard to define It's not, it is definitely not round. It's definitely kind of low. Speakers of other languages often have trouble distinguishing it from ah. English speakers, because it's often spelled with a U, often have trouble with and so let's look at that. First, here's some prototypical examples of it. So hung, gum, dust, bus, cut, buck, blood, flood, because, what, does, of. So again, a mishmash of different spellings. Of course, all of these quote unquote short U's, but even some double O's. And then some cases, because because of the way vowels get reduced, some cases are always pronounced this way. So because and what and does, all of these vowels got reduced, but they can have some full pronunciation. In that case, it gets an Same with of. So all of these are very unexpected to be pronounced this way. The nickname for this one is either the wedge or the caret. So you see on your keyboard that thing above the 6. It's not exactly that, because it's written on the line. It's actually an upside down V. But people sometimes call it the caret. And if you're typing and you use that one, that's okay, although it should be down on the line with the other lowercase letters. So just to help convince you, because with spelling often have trouble with so if you compare stud, stood, I think those will sound really different. Remember, this is really different sound. This is round and high. This is low. This is mid or very close to low and unround. So they are pronounced very differently. So when you hear the difference between stud, stood, hut, put, luck, look, huff, hoof, you can hear that And because I'm a native English speaker, I sometimes still have to think hut, put, or luck, look, if I want to remember which one. Because for years I only had English spelling. For people who don't speak English, they need these minimal pairs because they sound so similar. So they need to practice gut, got, shut, shot, cup, cop, bug, bog. Because of English spelling, English speakers don't tend to have trouble with that distinction, even though, as you can see, it's a little bit closer to that one. So again, very uncommon in world languages, very common in English. So these are our monophthongs. I haven't called them monophthongs yet, but they're monophthongs. You can see the mono in there, right? So mono means one. There's just one sound. So you can tell in our next video, I'm going to start leading into some two-part sounds. But let's review the features of these monophthongs. So we've got our high vowels, right? So 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 2 tense, 2 lax, but they're all high. So e, I, u, you're not opening your jaw very much for any of those. In the middle, we've got in the front a and e, in the back o, and And next week, when we get to phonology, we'll talk about the schwa. We had a little hint about that in class last week. And finally, we have the low vowels a and ah. So remember, even though there's 4 here, even though these get kind of low, they're defined as mid because they are just relaxed versions of the tense cardinal vowels. So those are our height features, high, mid, and low. And of course, we also have features about frontness and backness. So these are the front ones. When you open your mouth and say these, I'm just opening my mouth when I say that. And then when I close my mouth, I can do the opposite. So and you can practice that same thing. In the back, we have a similar thing where everything is lined up at different heights. So you can practice ooh. Here you are also going to round your lips when you transition from ah to ah. Or maybe you want to transition later and go through so just depending at what point you close your lips, you'll get or as you pronounce these. So these are our back vowels. They're all pronounced with the tongue toward the back of the mouth. As I said in class, front vowels are not all that front when you think about consonants, but they are front from these vowels that are pronounced in the back of the mouth. And as we said, as I just mentioned, there is a roundedness feature that's mostly redundant with front and back. We do have this one that's too low to be round. And then, of course, there's this distinction that is somewhat unique to English. So at the start of the next video, we're going to return to looking at vowel features and spelling. And you're going to start with this chart again and fill in those blanks. So make sure to watch that video too, so you get a full picture of the vowels of English.